Okay, so Mr. Isaac Alvarado, he is a PhD candidate at the Department of Design of NTNU, Norwegian University of Science and Technology, where he's researching the topic of circular economy under the umbrella of design for sustainability and social transformations. So this research focuses on the implications of circular economy for future everyday lives and design practices by using qualitative research methods. He has academic qualifications in communication science and industrial design engineering from Costa Rica Institute of Technology. So Isaac, it's a pleasure to again to meet you and to welcome you to SPA Bhopal and to this particular session.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for that introduction, Sureka.
Yeah.
Should I start sharing my screen?
Yes. Just a second. I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it still not?
Yeah, I've made you co-host now, so you will get the sharing rights. Yeah.
Okay. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Because I kind of lost you. Okay. Okay, so the title of my presentation is Future Circular Economies, Assumptions and Implications for Designers. As you already mentioned, I'm based on in Trondheim at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, the Department of Design, where I'm doing my PhD. I'm in the last months of my PhD. So I'm pretty much wrapping up everything. This presentation is structured, as you can see here, in 8 parts, but I would say that from number 2 to number 7 will be about the assumptions, and then just the last one will be application for designers. That will be more about talking, because we will also have a discussion or an exercise later in the workshop that we will work together, or that's the plan that I have. So first, a little background about my PhD. It is a project that has this title, Everyday Life in Circular Futures, and I took this as a challenge that is divided in three specific topics: everyday lives, circular, that refers to circular economy, and futures, that refers to the creation of these alternatives or these futures that will come in relation to the circular economy. For each one of them, there is a framing or a theoretical background that can be used. When it refers to everyday life, there is about individual agency, social practices, as Lucy mentioned before, social practice theory. Also, I'm also working a little bit on that, and consumption, which is very important. Then what it's about the circular economy, the distinction between circular economy and circularity, and also other forms of circular economy and other forms of, or alternative forms of circularity in relations to sustainability and waste and resources. And what it's about the future, what it means designing for futures or design futures, also imaginaries, what people can imagine about the future, and interventions both in the public and the private space. I start my background or my theoretical framing supported on the idea of that we need to have a socio-technical perspective. So we cannot take just the technical perspective, because the technical perspective is usually what is taken for circular economy, which is about material circularity. And it considers usually just aspects about how resources can be recovered and reused in other forms of production, or also how, for example, products can be prepared for remanufacture, or products can be prepared for different uses. So how making the materials making the materials last longer. So if we take this socio-technical perspective, I put there this quote by Michel Calon from 1997 about the engineers. engineers involved in the design and development of a technological system, particularly when radical innovations are involved, must permanently combine scientific and technical analysis with sociological analysis. And there is an important aspect there that is radical innovations. And the question is, are the circular economy radical innovations, or is it just the same, the business as usual? This is a question that also has been made by others in literature about circular economy, in both criticizing and also inviting people to think more about the circular economy as an opportunity to radically change how things are done at both the technical and the social. And I also take this other quote that it's from an article relating to ontological design, or the different ways in which something can be understood and perceived. So from design, that says that we design our world while our world acts back on us and designs us. And in relation to the circular economy, I see this interplay between the materials, how they exist and how we use them, and also how we get some affordance from those materials about what we can do and we cannot do. So there is a double relation there between us and the objects and us. So I put there this picture of this coffee pot, the mocha coffee pot, that I think it's very well known globally, but it's a product that has a context. It's a product that it's used for making coffee, but to make coffee it's not empty of meaning or empty of context. The fact that you can drink coffee virtually everywhere in the world, and the fact that you can use this product everywhere in the world, it's something that says about how resources are used and how materials are used, or are changing how humans act and behave in the world. So for example, there are social aspects to this. This is an everyday practice that is normalized. People drink coffee, for example, to stay awake in their work. People drink coffee in the breakfast in many countries. In other countries, they don't. Some people only drink coffee when they are with friends. Other people may drink coffee just in a specific moments, for example, when they have to study for long periods of time or something like that. While in a specific context, for example, in European countries, in some European countries, and in some places in USA, the coffee is drink, like for example, going to Starbucks, getting it in a cardboard cup that you can take with you, and you can create this new piece of trash that you wouldn't use, for example, in other countries doesn't happen. Coffee is not drink like that. Coffee is only it's only drink in a specific place, so in the setup of the coffee shop. Also, that there are other alternatives, like for example, there are other forms of making coffee that don't involve the use of energy, but the most common one is the one that uses energy to heat the coffee maker, and that there are also other beverages that could replace coffee. For example, in tea, the use of tea in other countries, and also that there is a connection to a larger system, that is the system of production between the global north and the global south. For example, most of the coffee is produced in global south countries. Like for example, the country where I come from is Costa Rica. It's a country where coffee is produced, and it's a very important part of the economical activity there historically. But the higher rates of coffee consumption don't happen in the global south countries. It happens in the global north countries. For example, in Norway, is one of the 3 countries where there is most consumption of coffee per capita. So the idea that you have this product, for example, that it's not disconnect from all these other aspects that are systemic and also that are social, but if you just focus on the technical part, on the coffee pot, you could talk about the aluminum, or you could talk about the plastic parts of it. But why are people using that? That's what you should be able to answer by asking it from a socio-technical perspective. So the circular economy, seen from this socio-technical perspective, you could say that you have two ways of understanding it, as also Lucy mentioned in her previous presentation. It could be understood as one circular economy. So when people talk about the circular economy, and then it's very normative and it's telling how things are, or it's multiple circular economies that will exist together. So you need an understanding that, okay, there is not one circular economy, but it's an opportunity to have multiple systems, to have a material circularity. So that's a pluralistic view of the circular economy. And that's depending in context and competing alternatives. Like, for example, I put this picture there that it's a flea market here in Trondheim last year. And the interesting thing that I see there is that, okay, this is a circular economy, but this is not an organized circular economy. This is a bottom-up circular economy brought up by people, just bringing their old stuff from their houses, the excessive things that they have, and they are trying to gain some money from that. So that's a form of circular economy, but it's probably not the industrialized circular economy. Now, all circular economies, whatever that is, they are supposed to be contending or contesting another thing that is that linear economy. So something that says that is the current paradigm of the economy, that the economy works in a linear structure that goes from resource extraction to waste, to the creation of waste, and then society in that linear economy is seen just as a reason to continue that continuous extraction and that continuous creation of waste in the form of solid waste or other forms of pollution. Emissions, for example, that comes from production are also part of that, of what comes out of the linear economy. That in an ideal setup, the circular economy would contest or solve. I don't think it will solve it, but will contest. So we can divide those, the linear economy, or what's happening with resources in this, and this is usually in the life cycle analysis of materials or products also. It's this production, consumption, waste sequence that we are used to. Most of the circular economy, most of the studies done in the circular economy are usually located in production, so the business section or the industrial, financial part of the circular economy, or waste, based on technology for waste sorting and technologies for recovering materials that are still usable to return them to production or to consumption. But there is a void or a lack of studies on consumption that I think it's something that has been or that it's been studied more recently, but it still needs more. So in the usual suspects related to design, we are used to here, for example, it's in design, in the whole eco-design tradition of product design and efficiency. We are also we as designers, I say, are also probably used to hearing about the waste hierarchy, which is something that came from Europe also, and also about the waste management, so designing for waste management. And as Lucy mentioned also in her presentation, it's something that that has to be reframed, but because designing for waste management is thinking that still things are going to become waste. So most people see now more favorable focusing, for example, in the waste hierarchy, but going completely to prevention. So avoiding recycling, avoiding even avoiding forms like remanufacture. So anything that could bring or use more energy to put a product again in a cycle of use should be avoided. Then there's also the question of putting the circular economy as a profit promise. So companies through changing their business model will create these opportunities to continue having a profit stream. That it's also a dilemma of the circular economy. So should that be the goal? Creating more profit. So, but then you have these two things that are usually put within the strategies for business models. Circularity that should keep the pace of nature. That it's also focused on the social metabolism, something that is called so how materials enter and leave a society. For example, as you mentioned before as you heard probably yesterday, that was mentioned yesterday in the keynote about the metabolism of cities. So what enters and what leaves a city? How can that be controlled, or what can be intervened for that? And also these ideas of the loops closing, so making it a complete circle, so things are always in use within the economy, narrowing, using less resources. That should be something that I think people should also point at, not from the way that it's seen, for example, in business model strategies, and also slowing loops. It's important. So keeping things or not producing new things continuously. Then within these usual suspects, we have, for example, the proposals of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, with their that is based on servitization, changing ownership, and also in a sharing economy, but in a sharing economy that it's one could see a business sharing economy, not based on peer-to-peer share of products and materials. Then we have the fact that if there is a mainstream circular economy that is based on waste management and profits to businesses, we can also have competing visions for that. So that are usually thought from the position of what opportunities for welfare and well-being is the circular economy creating. So, or if there are. Then within this also, within these two, we could get that there are two competing visions: an industrial circular economy that's promulgated on creating secondary material streams, so or streams of materials that are recovered from waste, and also another one that it says that, okay, it's not about going to an industrial mode of the economy, but it's instead returning to something that existed before, that it's keeping the production and the economy local and small. So these are competing visions that are already being explored. And then there are questions that are raised about if a circular economy, for example, if it's based on recycling, can it be forever? What about the material downcycle, or the materials losing their properties, their physical and chemical properties in many uses? And also more current questions about the economic system, because one of the promises that it's usually attached to the circular economy is the premise of decoupling economic growth from resource use. So it's possible, for example, to live in a world where value or economic value is kept the same, or it's kept stable. And what would that require? So in Europe, there is talked about degrowing the economy or the organized orchestration of a reduced input of material, of the material footprint over time. So the economy stops growing as it is mandated now, but the well-being of people remains. That's a question. And that's a question that comes from this idea that there could be consumption reduction or sufficiency that would contest also this idea of the great acceleration that has been posed, that all types of consumption that people do for mostly in the north, in the global north, in Europe and also in USA, are have exploded exponentially in the 1950s. So all things like tourism, like the use of communications, the use of airplanes, everything has grown and continues growing. And the idea is that, okay, if you continue growing like that, there has to be some limits to that. And it's something that it's not new. It has been set in 1972 by, for example, the limits to growth. And also in ideas like, for example, this idea of setting or of seeing the planet as a spaceship instead of an endless or limitless world, seeing it as something that we all live together there, but there are limits to how much we can grow. So, but that's also connected to who can impose those limits on, or how. For example, this is an example of two refrigerators that are located on the streets of Trondheim. On the left, you can see a refrigerator that it's Coca-Cola. So it's a vending machine. So it's selling bottles of plastic that probably will become waste. And it's functioning there 24/7, and it's available for anybody who has the want of a Coca-Cola at any hour of the day. And while the example that we have at the right is also a refrigerator on the street, but it's a refrigerator that has another social motivation. It's about people who it's a place for people to go there and get some food that otherwise would go to waste. So one is about saving food from becoming waste, and the other one is for creating profit. So how can what's the equilibrium that should exist there when social limits are planned or thought for a circular economy, if there are? So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my research, which I did or I'm doing also here in Trondheim. And I did well, I have published already about 2 studies. I'm finishing the last one. So I'm gonna talk briefly about these two first studies. In the first study, I did 26 interviews. That was with another colleague from the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies of Culture. So we were working on interviewing people in the government and the private sector about their visions about the circular economy, and it was a study that was using discourse analysis to identify discourse coalitions. And we identified here in Trondheim that it's a city that's not still at the forefront of the circular economy, but they are working towards that. So what we identified with our study, it was that there are three main discourse coalitions. One is based on waste management, that it's completely about recycled technology, and also following some material indicators for the circular economy that are given from the European Union. And also they were talking also about material replacement, for example, using materials that are biodegradable. And a second coalition that it's based on the share economy, but it's the industrial share economy. So it's about servitization also, and about the collocation of small and medium enterprises, and also having opportunities for industrial symbiosis. These two fierce coalitions are based on growth and market-oriented perspectives. So they are about creating profits, or creating profits for people, or creating opportunities for people in the private sector to create or to have opportunities to make profits. And a third one that it's kind of contesting the other two. It's about consumption reduction or consumption decrease, where they said that there is no political mandate because there is nothing in the laws or anything that says that people should consume less. So the only way that they have to promote that is through, for example, and it's also in the public sector, but there is also some local NGOs working towards that it's about consumer power and producer regulation, which is something that doesn't exist in the current legal system here in Norway. So they don't have a way to intervene to that from the public sector. So this is more about environment and responsibility oriented, but those are still not the goals that are as important as making profit. So you have that contradiction there, or that dilemma. And then the second study, this is still not published, but I mean, I already have two publications, but they are conference papers, but there will be a future publication because it's under review. It's about it's a small ethnographic study made here also in Trondheim, in trying to encounter alternative forms of consumption that could at least give some insights about what could contest the linear economy or the consumer society that it's so prevalent in Norway. And what I found there is these three aspects that maybe could help in making people change their way of understanding how consumption works within the economy. So one aspect that it's there is that the consumption should be seen as a full cycle. So instead of seeing that distinction between production, consumption, and waste, they should all be seen as consumption, because you are producing to consume, and you are also creating waste because you are consuming. They are not separated. So they are all just part of a thing that has a goal, that it's consumption. Then also that people's relationality as members of communities with significant relations is important for a lot of people to participate in forms of, for example, in repairing, or forms of making at home. So these are things that could be studied more in depth. So how people relate to others, and what's also their identity in relation to how they see themselves as repairers. And also skills learning are fundamental, because people won't participate or won't think in different ways of consuming if they don't think they can do it. So what they think they can do, it's also very important. So implications for designers, and I put this little note that came out last year from Davos about, I think it was I don't remember, it was, yeah, the CEO of Coke, and she said that people still want plastic bottles. So they are not going to stop, or what they said is that they are not going to stop making plastic bottles because people want them. But I think it's because it will increase the cost of production. So it will reduce the profits from making bottles. But then if there is an open market or a freedom of market as it is now, things like this will continue happening. So what can designers do in this? And this is not a research, this is not what I'm answering in my research, but this is something that I'm asking. So in a future circular economy, whether it is the mainstream version of the circular economy or the alternative versions, what kind of designers could there exist? So what I see is that, okay, for designers, there is a lot of troubles that have to be seen at the systemic level. So what are the legal opportunities they have, the social practices, and also local and national policies, the radicality of innovation versus business as usual. Also, but there are also some opportunities to thinking about solutions to overcome creatively the limits that are imposed by the biophysical limits. Also, to work on interventions to change how people understand or think their participation in consumption, and also to work on interventions to improve the skills and competences of people to repair or to, for example, know what products shouldn't go to waste. So this is an example, for example, because there is in these two pictures, these are my glasses. Like a month ago they fall and they lost one of the fasteners. So I put some glue there, but that's not a professional repair. So it's still in use, but this is not something that will last forever. Also to get this glue, I had to buy the tube of glue. So that's not a circular economy. And then there is this other example that it's in a habitational project here. It's not, yeah, it's a habitational project here in Trondheim. And this, what you are seeing, it's a house made of recovered material from other construction. So they are using things that are not standard for construction, and that's why the house doesn't look like you would see, for example, in other houses in Norway. But the people who live there, they are very happy about that because it's their house that they did, that they could buy with their own, or that they could buy, no, that they could. It's the kind of house where they can live the way they want and make with their own, with the effort of their own hands. And also, I always invite people to check the work of Ernesto Rosa. It's a Cuban designer who talks about the technological disobedience. And this is from this is an interesting example because, for example, he talked about people in Cuba who, because of the economic restrictions and the market restrictions imposed by USA, couldn't bring many products. So for a lot of time, people were making this kind of funds from old motors, from other machines, or from for example from washing machine. They would make this fun. And that's an interesting example of how the context could also bring a different or an alternative circular economy that it's not a normative one. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. That